If you put your hand over your eyes and repeat after me, I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today. And open your ears. I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today. And now just put your hand over your heart and open your heart, arms. I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today. The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is that the prosperous heart is abundant. The prosperous heart is abundant. When you're in touch with your prosperous heart, you are not afraid. We could be sitting at our kitchen table with a pile of bills this high on the left and a bank account receipt that says you have $5 in your bank account on the right, and still know that you are okay, that without a shadow of a doubt that God has your back. Now, when I say that God in the sky, when I say God, I'm not talking about a God in the sky. I'm talking about a universal presence that can be learned. When we learn and we trust spiritual principles, we stop waiting for somebody else to rescue us. That knight in shining armor that so many of us look for when we're in trouble is actually our consciousness. That's who our knight in shining armor is. That is who will rescue us. Like today's sacred reading says, we are no longer need to insatiably crave more. The prosperous heart lets us know that whatever we have right now, we're okay. So how do we get this prosperous heart? Because I know sometimes I don't have it, and I always want it. Well, we're in week 2 of a little series on Julia Cameron's latest book called The Prosperous Heart. It's a book designed to improve our spiritual and emotional and physical well-being around our money. But, like I said last week, if you neither need nor want another dime, this series can also still help you. The law of abundance works on everything. It works on improving every area of your life. Your love life, your parenting life, your living without a job during COVID life, your life that's in chaos until January 21st comes, that life. It can help in every area of your life. These laws work on anything that you might be experiencing. So why is it that I focus on money when I talk about abundance and the prosperous heart? Because many of us, I think, are unnecessarily sad. We're fearful and angry because we're struggling with what some of us are experiencing, especially during this time of COVID, during times of layoffs and furloughs. But here's the thing. COVID is not robbing us of our security. Our consciousness is robbing us of our security. In this church, we believe that God is our source. It's not about luck. It's about being loved by the one love in our life. Now, when I say God is our source, again, I want to remind all of us that I don't mean a God in the sky that has a checkbook that's making sure they have your correct address since you moved last time. Now, don't get me wrong. I want all of us to have help who want help around our prosperity, around our abundance. And those of you who want help can get it. Because if your desire is being delayed or even denied, you have options. There's a power for good that all of us can use. And the really good news is the power for good that some of us call God left us a blueprint on exactly how to use this power. Now, last week I talked about, I covered several practical tools from this book and the blueprint, and that's all on YouTube. If you want to go back, and if you haven't gotten it, I encourage you to use those tools. Just use them for a month and see if that doesn't open up the flow for you. Today I want to talk about some of the societal myths and personal hidden beliefs that we might have about prosperity that keeps that flow squirting instead of gushing in our lives. So let's start with her wisdom from the opening sentence of the 2nd chapter. And that is this: the opposite of prosperity is not poverty, it's anxiety. The opposite of prosperity is not poverty, it's anxiety. See, anxiety and stable long-term prosperity cannot coexist together. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, taught frequently in many of his writings that we need to cultivate calm expectancy as we follow God's blueprint and how to get more prosperous. Now, I'm going to tell you it's not so easy to do. When we're not sure where the next meal is coming from, where the money from your rent is coming from, it can be anxiety producing, and that's why it's called cultivating the practice. Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Buddhist teacher, encourages us when we are anxious to make a practice of going to the home that is in the home within ourselves. Thich Nhat Hanh believes that every human being has within themselves a tranquil oasis. Now, what if we were just to believe that much? That every human being within ourselves has a tranquil oasis that is always free of anxiety. When you're in, now, that's the Buddhist way of putting it. The way that church people, whatever your church or your synagogue is, the way we might put it is, when you're stressed, that's the time to go to God. So how do we do that? By being quiet, by being still, so that we can hear God's wisdom. The quieter your body and mind are, the greater your chance of hearing something that will calm you and will begin to find the opportunity in the midst of adversity. There is always opportunity for soul's growth in the midst of adversity. And very often, there is room for the opportunity for material growth in the midst of adversity. But we get so freaked out. We don't want to look at the adversity to see where the opportunity for growth might be. Now, if you're looking for God, the idea of looking for God when you're in trouble just seems too outlandish when you're in the middle of a consequence of lack, then listen to one of Cameron's students and what she says in the book. Claire is a freelance artist. She lives off her commissions and has for many years. But Claire is a worrier. Last year, she became so worried that she began having panic attacks and sleepless nights. Fortunately, she had a friend with a prosperous heart. Why worry? The friend asked. Every single time you catch yourself going to worry, go to God instead. Desperate for relief, Claire tried her friend's advice. At first, it felt really irresponsible, she recalls. I mean, it just seemed so wrong somehow not to worry. Wrong or not, Claire tried to teach herself every time she worried, to catch herself every time she worried. At first, it was a moment-by-moment decision. She found that she worried nearly all the time. God's got it, she would tell herself, feeling the habit of worry stubbornly plucking at her psyche. Gradually, very gradually, God's got it began to be a fact for her. Now I barely worry at all. I catch myself when I do. Worry was a habit for me, and now faith is. See, here's what happens with spiritual teachings. They are so simple that we discount them. What do you mean I can just say, God's got this, God's got this, God's got this, over and over and over again? And the worry will begin to dissipate because you are cultivating an attitude of calm expectation. Try it. See if what it happens for you. So the first thing we have to deal with is anxiety. And the second thing we have to deal with is addiction. It is difficult to be an addicted person with a prosperous heart. Doing spiritual work, especially when you're trying to move from fear to faith, is not for the faint-hearted in our lives. Because that time of moving into a drink or a joint or a bag of chips or cookies or overwork or sex or the internet or news feed for hours on end can become very seductive. And it can challenge your commitment to have a prosperous heart. Addiction, as many of us know, is a disease of masks. the disease of denial. If you have an addiction and you want some help, we have help for you. We have options for you. We can call a practitioner. Call this church and we'll refer you to a practitioner. That practitioner is not going to solve your addiction for you, but that practitioner will begin to pray with you. That practitioner will begin to support you in better understanding how God's blueprint works, how spiritual principles work, and that practitioner will then begin to point you in the direction of recovery. I actually personally know drunks who are very rich, but they're not going to be for long. And they're not really happy right now. Another area of our consciousness to clean up on the way to a prosperous heart is around your values. So often what we do looks good on paper, but it doesn't feel good in our heart. Cameron herself tells the story of living in Manhattan for over a decade, where she had written a book a year. That's 10 books. She wrote 3 musicals and 1 opera, all of which did really well. And with the money that she got from all that work, she bought a huge, beautiful apartment near Central Park. Now, new, beautiful, huge apartments are very rare in New York. But she thought she was really happy in New York. People were envious of her life. They would say, "Whoa, you're doing so well here." One day, she took a writing tablet out to Central Park with a chair, and she sat down and she did an exercise from The Artist's Way, which is another famous book that she's written. And in that exercise, you take a sheet of paper and you write down 1 to 25. And then you begin filling in each one with things that make you happy in your life. So she began listing things that she loved. The first 8 things were things like sagebrush, mountains, eagles, ravens, vast vistas. And she realized none of the things that she had listed were reflective of New York. So she started again. She was determined to find things that she loved about New York. So she wrote window boxes, Central Park, squirrels. She broke off again and she realized all her New York list was either flora or fauna. Determined, she started again. Well, I love window shopping on Madison Avenue at pricey shops. And she realized as she thought about that, she was envisioning cowboy boots and saddles. And she said, okay, this is still not working. I am envisioning everything that she thought of, moved her back to wide open spaces out west. Still, she didn't want to give up New York. She had done so well. She was determined to find things about New York that she loved. So she started writing down restaurants. Then she realized she wrote all the restaurants that served comfort foods for her. And she began asking the question, what is it I'm comforting about myself? Why do I feel I need to numb my feelings? And she realized she had stumbled on a very inconvenient truth. She was not happy in New York. She didn't want to believe it, of course. She told herself, of course I'm happy. Look how well I'm doing. But doing and being are not the same things. She realized she couldn't have a prosperous heart in New York because she felt pinched. She needed something more generous, more spacious, less rushed. She moved very quickly after this realization out to Santa Fe, where her prosperous heart began to soar. Another hidden belief that you might be experiencing as a block to your prosperity is around loss. Cameron writes this, and this was really hard for me to wrap my head around. Loss is always a gain in disguise. Now remember, spiritual work is not for the faint-hearted. Knowing that loss is always a gain in disguise doesn't mean that loss isn't to be grieved. If you have a loss in your life, be sure to grieve it, but make it a season, not a lifetime. Stubbornly choosing to look for the lesson, even in the darkest of situations of your life, will always lead to growth. We've all heard the wisdom. God doesn't give us anything more than we can handle. It can seem easily believable for each one of us in this room and each one of us watching at home if we realize that we got through that divorce. We got through that death. We got through that pink slip. If we asked everyone in this room and everyone watching online to think of one thing that you thought you would never get through, one thing that you thought nothing good could ever come from this, and yet you were willing to look at it, you would see that you grew from that experience in your life. I want to wind up this morning talking about two things I think block our prosperous heart. The first is understanding the danger of what she calls the magic number. And the second is answering the question, what is enough? A number is not magic. It's just a number. Regretfully, we often believe that a magic number exists and that if getting to it will solve all of our problems. Now look, at CSA, we teach the importance of having goals. And perhaps a number is attached to your goal. And we love that. But don't get your happiness attached to the goal or to the number. Every time we reach for that number, don't you find that it's suddenly too low? That you need even a higher number? But a number will never solve your problems. So what is enough? Once we engage a prosperous heart, we understand that we may not have all that we want yet. We can be assured we have enough. How do we know we be assured we have enough? Well, if we have a prosperous heart, we're calm, knowing that we don't have enough yet. We're not hysterical, we don't have enough yet, and we're alive. That's how you know. You're breathing. Your needs are being cared for at this second, maybe even a nanosecond. Rather than insatiably chasing more, people with a prosperous heart make the best of what they have. We find that we can meet the needs and even our wants. We know that prosperity is more than cash flow, more than the fiscal bottom line. You know what's more important than having money and having all of your physical needs met? It's helping other people. Helping other people will make you feel happier than having lots of money in the bank. Cameron talks about a woman she worked with named Andrea, who was a millionaire. She considered herself deeply spiritual and fully blessed. She had achieved her magic number and beyond that magic number. She had work that she passionately loved and was extremely well paid for which she was extremely well paid. She planned to use a good portion of the money that she was earning for charity just as soon as she had enough to make her gifts. In the meantime, her investments were yielding a high return. At least that's what her investor told her. The problem is her investor was Bernie Madoff. When all was said and done, the millions that she had reduced to $10,000. She was, of course, really angry, and she was sad, both at Bernie Madoff and at God. How could this have happened to her? She was just trying to get enough to help more people. In hindsight, she realized that what she really was greedy in her life, and that she could have been giving a portion of what she was earning and amassing all along. She also realized that $10,000 in combination with this well-paying job was taking care of all of her needs at the moment. She realized she didn't want to wait for another moment to help other people. She founded a nonprofit with a goal of founding 10 libraries in low-income communities. She worked tirelessly and is happier than she has ever been in her life. And she is now very close to achieving those 10 libraries. Can you imagine what 10 libraries would cost to make? And here's what she said: I think God wanted me to be more involved in my charity work than just writing a check. Today, maybe you would look at your life and take a little evaluation of it and see, do I have enough? Am I sharing enough right now with other people, knowing that that's where my real happiness is? is in helping other people. Am I doing that right now, or am I waiting until something else will happen in my life? So you have two homeworks this week. One homework is to make sure that you look and see, how am I helping in this world, especially now when we're so fractured? How am I coming from compassion, even with people I vehemently disagree with? Is there a way to reach out to one of those people and actually help them this week? And the other homework is to watch the movie Social Dilemma on Netflix. Let's take this message into prayer, knowing that there is a power greater than we are in this planet, and we are moving in and around and through it. And it is moving in and around and through us. We can't get away from this power. The only thing we can do is not recognize it. So I speak my word right now for recognizing this power for good in the universe, allowing it to flow through me so that it can come out of me in help and in love and in compassion and in hope and in new beginnings. I give thanks for that. I release this word into the law, and together we say, and so it is.